All right, what's going on, guys? It's Simple Sports back again with another episode. And today we're going to be looking at the college football top 25. Obviously, we got college football and football in general coming up here soon. And football is my favorite sport. NBA is kind of settled down besides the Kyrie and Isaiah Thomas deal and a few other smaller storylines, but that's the overlaying one right now. So, with that being said, I'm going to talk about my thoughts on the preseason polls, specifically the top four, and really the top 10, but especially the top four. But I'll talk about the 1 through 25 ranking as a whole and sort of how I feel about that. Probably get some more NFL stuff done later this week, but that's where we are. So without further ado, let's begin. So top 25 came out, and as expected, Alabama's number 1, Ohio State's number 2, and then it was either Florida State and USC 3 or 4, depending on who you ask. Currently, Florida State is 3, USC 4. And then around out to 10, we have Clemson, Penn State, Oklahoma, Washington, Wisconsin, and Oklahoma State. And then just missing out, you have Michigan, Auburn, and LSU at 11, 12, and 13. For the AP poll, pretty similar for the coaches poll. I think the only difference is Washington and Oklahoma are flip-flopped. And then Michigan is in the top 10, and Oklahoma State is not. But by and large, pretty much the same, at least for the top 10. So, first things first, just looking at this, I think the preseason top 4 will largely resemble the end of the year top 4, with the exception of, in my opinion, if you ask me, I think Florida State will miss out. Or excuse me, not Florida State, but USC. I think USC will miss out. So my top 4 for me is Alabama, Ohio State, Florida State, and Michigan, with USC and Penn State just missing out. That's the top 4 that I have to finish the season, or at least to finish the regular season going into the college football playoffs. And that's not the final standings, but going into the playoffs, that's what I think. Now, realistically, I think Alabama, Ohio State, and Florida State will fluctuate between 1 through 4. Maybe one of them will lose a game or two throughout the year, but I think at the end of the year when the playoffs start, those 3 will be in. The 4th team, whether they are actually at 4th or not, is to be seen. But the 4th team to go in my opinion, will be Michigan, even though they're currently at 11th in the AP poll, 9th in the coaches poll. I think they're just underrated. Coaching is pretty much, in college sports, that is a large part of it. I don't think it is as this sounds dumb saying it, but I don't think coaching in the NFL and NBA is as impactful as it is at the college level. Not to say it doesn't matter. Obviously, it matters. But I think I think if you have far and away the better coach in college football or college basketball, I think it matters more if you had a far and away better coach in the NFL and NBA. Now, I think if the talent is similar, then coaching in the NFL and NBA will matter more. But I think if you have a big big gap between talent and coach on opposite sides. So in other words, if the good coach doesn't have as great of a team as the bad, or I won't say bad coach, but the lesser coach has a better team. Anyway, point being, I think coaching matters, and I think Harbaugh at Michigan is a phenomenal coach, and I think he is going to make all of the difference for them. But that's just personal opinion, obviously, so we'll see how it goes. But I do want to talk about a couple of these teams, and I think the reason that top 4 for me will stay the same, with the exception of Michigan at the end of the year, is due to the schedules. So let's just jump right into it. Alabama, they're really not going to face much resistance, I don't think, except for their opener with Florida State, which, quite frankly, No matter which of those teams lose out, no matter which of those teams lose that game, because obviously one of them is going to lose. I think either one, no matter which one loses, will have a chance to win their way back into the playoffs. So I don't think that's going to matter for either team. So outside of that first game, both Alabama and Florida have a pretty easy schedule. Alabama does get they do get Texas A&M on the road, which for whatever reason has proven to be troublesome for them. And then Mississippi State and at Auburn. Auburn could be a tricky one, but I don't think it'll be a problem. So I think Alabama will go undefeated during the regular season. I think they will beat Florida State. Florida State schedule, again, Alabama is their toughest game. After that, they do get Louisville about halfway through the schedule, which could be a tough task with Lamar Jackson. And they also get at Clemson, which I don't know how Clemson's going to be this year. I think they're just kind of living off of last year, which is fine. I just don't think they will be as good as they were last year, but we'll see. So those would be their toughest two. And then they do have to go to Florida, which Florida's not a terrible team, and obviously they're a rival, so they could, play each other well. And then also Miami, who's better than they have been in recent years. They get them at home, but Miami is not a snoozer either. So slightly tougher than Alabama, but not really. Ohio State, they do get Oklahoma at home, which they blew the doors off Oklahoma. Was it last year? I think it was last year. And then they do get, obviously, they have to play Penn State and Michigan State and Michigan. So they are the one team who I think will have a much tougher time going undefeated. I think they might lose one of those games, depending on when they lose. As long as they don't lose any of the home games, I think they will still be fine. They definitely can't lose to Michigan State, and they can't lose to Oklahoma, not at home. And obviously they can't lose any of the other games because they play Indiana, Army, UNLV, Rutgers, Maryland, Nebraska, and Iowa and Illinois. So obviously they can't lose those games. But then they do have Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, and Oklahoma, two of which on the road. Michigan one of which is on the road. Michigan is on the road. They do get Michigan State, Penn State, and Oklahoma at home. So they can't lose any of those three. So the one game that they might be able to drop is at Michigan. And if all goes well with Michigan, and Michigan actually rises into the playoffs, then it won't have that big of an effect, especially if Ohio State if they remain in second place. But we'll see. I don't think that'll happen, but you never know. Michigan's obviously a lot better. Definitely a close game last year, so we'll see how it goes. And then Michigan's schedule is okay. It's not terrible. They do obviously have Michigan State and Penn State and Ohio State, but outside of that, I don't see any real competition except for Florida, their opener, which I don't think it would be a problem for them. Outside of that game and Wisconsin, which could be a tough one, it is on the road. I don't think they'll have any issues either. So I think Michigan maybe loses a game or two. Maybe they lose in Penn State and Wisconsin. They both play on the road. I don't see too much outside of that. So those are my top four for me starting the playoffs going into next year. USC is currently fourth. Sam Darnold, obviously, is the favorite to win the Heisman. I just don't think it'll happen just based on that. Like, there's so much pressure there. Like, they pretty much will have to win out because I think Michigan is going to rise. And if Michigan's at 5 and they're at 4, and their schedule is not easy by any stretch. Let's take a look at USC's schedule. So they have Stanford at home. They have Texas at home. And then they have Notre Dame towards the end of the year. So USC schedule is definitely not the easiest, but definitely, I mean, they could go undefeated. Don't get me wrong. It's not a supremely tough schedule, but I don't know. I think they're going to falter early in the year with Stanford, maybe even Texas. Outside of that, I think they should win out. So if they lose 2 games, they're definitely not making it in. If the rest of these teams maybe lose a game or go undefeated, they're obviously not getting in. Clemson, I'm not a big believer in at number 5. Penn State is better at 6. I don't think they're good enough quite yet to make the top 4. I think they just miss out at either 5 or 6. Same thing with Oklahoma. I think they peaked last year, actually. I don't think they're going to make the top 4. Washington, yeah, whatever. Oklahoma State is interesting because they could realistically go undefeated. I don't know if anyone's really looking at their schedule, but they have arguably, well, definitely one of the better quarterbacks in the country. Potentially a Heisman candidate. See how things shake out. He's a solid pick for Heisman just because a lot of times the favorite doesn't win. And so you have to look at someone who's sort of on the just outside looking in. He's one of those guys. You also have like a JT Barrett. Lamar Jackson is down there. But obviously you have the Sam Darnolds and Josh Rosens and all that stuff. Josh Allen is another quarterback. I don't think their team is going to be good as a whole, but he is a phenomenal arm talent. He's not super accurate. I just don't know if that is more to do with the team he's on and the people he's playing with versus him. I'm not a huge fan of college quarterbacks. I'm not a huge fan of any quarterback that can't break 60% completion percentage, which I think he's at like 58 or 59. But again, that is due to his team because he does play for Wyoming, so not the greatest school for football, relatively speaking anyway. But their schedule is pretty straightforward. Their toughest test will be Oklahoma. They also do have Baylor and Texas. Kansas State could be a pretty tough game. All of their games they should be they're all winnable. I just don't know if they will be able to go basically Baylor and then Texas and then West Virginia and then Oklahoma. Like, that's a pretty tough 4-game stretch. So we'll see how it goes. But if they go undefeated, I think they make the playoff because they're only a couple spots out as it is. And if they run the table and one of these other teams loses, then you're going to have to consider them for that 4th spot. And if they go undefeated, I think Mason Rudolph, especially if Darnold or Rosen falter just a little bit and Oklahoma State goes undefeated, I think Mason Rudolph will take the Heisman this year. But who knows? That's my sleeper pick. Is either Oklahoma State or Michigan. If I had to pick one or the other, actually I think I'd go with Oklahoma State because they have the better quarterback. Now, Harbaugh is the great coach, so we'll see how much of his coaching prowess helps Michigan because they don't have the greatest quarterback. But I don't know. My pick would be Michigan. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Oklahoma State snuck in there. And then after that, I don't see too many other teams really being competitive for the playoffs anyway. I don't know. I just think this year is pretty. I think this year for college football is actually going to be pretty cut and dry. If you want my pick, my heart tells me it's going to be Bama and like a Ohio State, especially if they stay 1-2. Because if they stay 1-2, then Ohio State is going to get either, using my scenario, they would either get Florida State or Michigan. And Michigan, they've had their number, although it's been closer the last 2 years, but they've had their number obviously for a while. And Florida State, it's kind of hard to gauge them I'm not 100% sure. I don't follow them as closely as I do some of these other teams, but I know they're good. Obviously, they wouldn't be third if they weren't. I just think that their schedule will present a loss in there somewhere, whether it be Clemson, Florida, Louisville, or Miami. Those are 4 tough games. And then obviously you open with Alabama. So we'll see. If they lose early, especially if it's not a close game, they could drop out of the playoff, the top 4 immediately down to like 7 or 8, depending on how the other teams do. Maybe even Michigan could jump up there because their opening game is Florida. So it's not Alabama they're beating, but it's a significant win. Florida's still ranked in the top 20, so that'd be a significant win. So who knows how that's going to play out the first week. I'm pretty pumped for it though. Like I've been even watching preseason because I've been so excited for football to come back. The NFL, I think this year is going to be one of the most balanced and competitive years we've seen in a long time. Same thing with college football. I think it's going to be balanced. I think Alabama and Ohio State are far and above everyone else, even the 3rd and 4th teams. Mostly due to coaching. You have 2 of the best coaches. And if you look at my Final Four, right, what is one thing that they have in common? They all have a phenomenal coach. That's the main thing. Because if you look at the rest of the country, that's the one thing that those 4 teams have in common. Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, and Alabama. You got Jimbo Fisher, Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, and Harbaugh. Like those are, you could argue those are the four best coaches in college football. Throw in Dabo Swinney, guys like that. Sumlin might be. Some people would argue Sumlin, and I'm talking about just over the entire country. Obviously, Sumlin would be at the top with the rest of those guys. Maybe not on that level, but he's definitely like a tier 2 guy. You also got Franklin at Penn State, who's a great coach. And again, Penn State is, for me, just missing out. Same thing with USC. USC is just missing out for me. They have a solid coach in Helton, Franklin, with Penn State. And so that's why I say coaching, I think, is going to matter as much, if not more, than the players for college football this year. So top 4 teams for me, 3 of the top 4 coaches. You can argue he's the 4th best coach with Jimbo Fisher. Obviously, Dabo Swinney would take exception to that. So would Franklin, Helton, a couple of other guys who are on the way up. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm pretty pumped for it, though. I can tell you that much. I will be very much watching the Alabama and Florida State. I'll probably watch most, if not all, of the top 10 teams play this year, even if I can't watch them at the same time, obviously, because some of them will play at the same time. I will try to go back and watch whatever games I didn't miss. But I'm pretty pumped for college football. I'm pretty pumped for football in general. So that's my top 4 to finish the year. Again, that is simply the 4 teams I think will be 1 through 4 once the playoffs start. Not particularly in this order, but Alabama, Ohio State, Florida State, and Michigan. With Penn State, Oklahoma State, and USC just barely missing out. So, yeah, that's it for me. I'll see you guys in the next one. Not really sure what it's going to be about. Probably NFL related. But until then, peace.